Published 0503 EDT, the 4th of September 2017. Updated 0546 EDT, the 4th of September 2017. Piers Morgan clashed with sacked L'Oreal transgender model Monroe Bergdorf on Good Morning Britain over her statement that all white people are racist. Morgan marked his return to the show with a fiery interview opposite Bergdorf, who made the headlines last week after she was fired by L'Oreal Paris for a lengthy Facebook rant. During the post she fumed, "Honestly, I don't have energy to talk about the racial violence of white people anymore. Yes, all white people." Morgan took the model to task over the comments and said they were deeply offensive and a load of rubbish. Scroll down for video. Piers Morgan clashed with sacked L'Oreal transgender model Monroe Bergdorf on Good Morning Britain over her statement that all white people are racist. Bergdorf became the first trans woman to appear in a L'Oreal Paris UK campaign when she was cast as part of a diversity initiative. However, the cosmetics giant terminated her contract after claiming the model was at odds with their values of diversity and tolerance. Morgan, 52, took his place alongside Susanna Reid following a summer break and announced he was also nursing 3 fractured ribs. His injury did not appear to hamper his hunger for the debate, but Reid opened the discussion by asking Bergdorf whether she thought all white people are racist. The model explained, "I don't think that all white people are by nature racist. From conception to birth I think that we are all the same, but we need to speak about how we're socialized as people, and my post was based on socialization and racism as a structure. I think as society we're taught certain things. We're taught that men are superior to women. We're taught that women are meant to be submissive. We're taught that gay people are meant to be ashamed of their sexuality, but it doesn't mean that this is how things need to be." Morgan then questioned why Bergdorf had written in her incendiary Facebook post that all white people were party to racial violence. She said socialization has placed all white people in a certain privilege. That means if you are not dismantling racism, or helping to dismantle racism, you are part of the problem, because that makes you complicit. You need to actively work with people of color to put diversity, which this campaign was about, into place. When L'Oreal fires me for speaking about the origins of racism, then that goes completely against what diversity is. The last week model Bergdorf made headlines when she called on people to boycott L'Oreal Paris after the cosmetics giant sacked her over a Facebook post about the racism of white people. The model claimed that excerpts of her post, which was shared a month ago, was cut out and sold to the media by a disgruntled friend from university. However, Morgan countered that the post was public and that she wanted people to read it, and wasn't misquoted. He said, "I'm not sexist, I'm not racist, I'm not a homophobe, so who are you? With the greatest respect, who are you to say that every straight white guy?" Bergdorf interrupted, saying, "I did not say that." Morgan interjected, "Well, you did. You are calling straight white guys like me a series of offensive stereotypical labels, which I find very offensive." The pair continued to argue, with Morgan later protesting that the model's comments were a load of rubbish. Morgan looked clearly aggravated during his heated debate with model Bergdorf. When asked by Reid if she regretted the structure of her Facebook post, Bergdorf replied, "I don't regret the form of the words. At the end of the day I'm an activist, and activists aren't there to say a bunch of stuff that people like. We're there to call things out and make a change. Yes, I said all white people, because all white people have privileges that come out of colonialism and slavery." A clearly aggravated Morgan asked if she thought that white people using a food bank were more privileged than her. The model replied, "I am saying that if a person is at the food bank and they are white and their counterpart is black, that white person has more of a chance of getting out of that situation than their black counterpart because of white privilege." The heated debate continued, with Bergdorf eventually saying she felt like she was banging her head against a wall. Morgan said, "What you're up against is someone challenging you on your public statements, which you've managed to turn into a massive, great story of your poor victimhood. I'm telling you now, that I think when you say all white people are racially violent, that it is deeply offensive." Ms. Bergdorf said that all white people have privileges that come out of colonialism and slavery during her GMB interview, but when you clarify and say all straight white guys are basically all sexist, homophobes, and racially violent, I as a straight white guy, who is not remotely racist, get very offended by that. He then accused the model, "You've attacked every white person in the world." Bergdorf also claimed that the history of slavery and the empire was not being discussed in schools, with a focus heavily on white historical events. She said, "We need to speak about why the school syllabus is so white, why we are not taught the violence of slavery in schools, why we aren't taught the violence of colonialism, why we are not taught about the violence of the empire. We are taught a whitewashed history. Kids are not taught about black history in the same way they are taught about white history." Morgan, 52, took his place alongside Susanna Reid following a summer break and announced he was also nursing 3 fractured ribs. Bergdorf was fired just days after her L'Oreal role was revealed. The brand sacked her over a post responding to the violence of white supremacists in Charlottesville, in Virginia, in which she said, "Honestly, I don't have energy to talk about the racial violence of white people anymore. Yes, all white people, because most of y'all don't even realize or refuse to acknowledge that your existence, privilege and success as a race is built on the backs, blood and death of people of color. Your entire existence is drenched in racism. From microaggressions to terrorism, you guys built the blueprint for this s. Come see me when you realize that racism isn't learned, it's inherited and consciously or unconsciously passed down through privilege. Once white people begin to admit that their race is the most violent and oppressive force of nature on Earth, then we can talk." L'Oreal announced they were sacking the model, writing on Twitter, "L'Oreal champions diversity. Comments by Munroe Bergdorf are at odds with our values and so we have decided to end our partnership with her." Bergdorf responded on Facebook, writing, "This rant was a direct response to the violence of white supremacists in Charlottesville. It was not written this week." Morgan took Bergdorf to task over her comments that all white people were racist, secondly, identifying that the success of the British Empire has been at the expense of the people of color, is not something that should offend anyone. It is a fact. It happened. Slavery and colonialism, at the hands of white supremacy, played a huge part in shaping the United Kingdom and much of the West, into the superpower that it is today. She continued, "When a transgender woman of color, who has been selected to front up a big brand campaign to combat discrimination and a lack of diversity in the beauty industry, speaks on her actual lived experience of being discriminated against because of her race and identifies the root of where that discrimination lies, white supremacy and systemic racism, that big brand cannot simply state that her thoughts are not in line with the ethics of the brand. If you truly want equality and diversity, you need to actively work to dismantle the source of what created this discrimination and division in the first place." In a later post, she added, "Sit still and smile in a beauty campaign championing diversity, but don't actually speak about the fact that lack of diversity and is due to racism. Or speak about the origins of racism. It'll cost you your job. This makeup brand cares about nothing but money. I urge you to boycott L'Oreal Paris. I can't express how disappointed I am in the entire team in dealing with misquotes that were entirely placed out of context." On Sunday, Bergdorf posted a message on Twitter thanking her fans and supporters, writing, "Things are really tough right now. But I promise I will use whatever platform I have to say whatever needs to be said." Her previous Facebook account with all of the messages on is no longer in use and she announced she has set up a new profile page on the social media site. L'Oreal has been contacted for further comment.